On today's show, many are calling it the worst, least clutch contract year season for a starting pitcher of all time. That's right, the season in review for one Sir Dylan Cease, going over the good, the many bad, and how I think his free agency process is going to play out, among many other things. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Thursday, October 23rd. As always, I'm your host with sometimes the most, Javier Reyes, and I've been covering this team for 6 years now, and soon to be 7 for not just this podcast, but various other outlets, including justbaseball.com, chief among them. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Go check that out. You can also check me out on the socials at Javipeno, Javiipieno, or on Twitter/X and Blue Sky, whatever you want to do. Today's episode, guys, it's the season in review for Dylan Cease. Dare I say, I think in a lot of ways one of the more fascinating ones, because I think Dylan Cease had a season that is bad. Spoiler. Every Padres fan knows that, but an interesting season in terms of like what happens when you face a decision of whether or not the numbers support that you're going to be better in the future versus seeing what you saw with your eyeballs. So it's going to be really interesting. I'm excited. Let's waste no more time. Let's get into it. Dylan Cease on the year. The main thing you need to know, finished with a 4.55 ERA over across 168 innings. He produced 3.4 wins above replacement, which is pretty actually dang good if you like using WAR for pitchers. I personally don't. I think it's dumb. But, and frankly, why it's dumb is the fact that he had a WAR nearly as high as Nick Pivetta, by the way. WAR for pitchers, the reason I don't like using it, which I know that it sounds, this is like a... what's the word? It's an oxymoron, the fact that I say I don't like the stat even though I used it. Just because sometimes they use too many of the expected stats to determine whether or not someone was that good, right? So like they look at what could have been instead of what they just did that year, and I think that that's very foolish. But overall, he finished second on the team in WAR, only 0.3 behind Nick Pivetta. And there's a couple reasons for that. Now, here's the thing. We're going to start off with all the good. And it's not like there was a ton of good, frankly, for Dylan Cease this year, right? That's not going to shock anybody, but it's still something we got to talk about. First of all, 4.5 ERA, like, it's bad, but it's not the worst disaster case in the world when you look at some of the other good things that Dylan Cease did, which the biggest thing is he's still one of the best strikeout artists in baseball and probably was one of the better ones overall in general in the sport, which is what makes him such a fascinating pitcher and frankly what makes his bad 2025 season so disappointing, right? He had one of the best strikeout rates in the league, 29.8% strikeout rate, and that trailed only behind Garrett Crochet and Tariq Skubal. Right, Crochet 31.3 and Skubal 32.2. That's pretty good company to be in, right? So Dylan Cease, in terms of the swing and miss, clearly is still there. Clearly, like he was third in strikeout rate. He has a decent fastball velocity. He can hit you with a slider. He's going to be able to go after you and get strikeouts. Like that's just something that he's going to do. And he's been one of the most consistent pitchers in all of baseball when it comes to that, right? Since 2021, he's also 7th among starting pitchers, among all starting pitchers in total innings pitched. So basically, this is a guy who has a 27, maybe 26 to 30% almost strikeout rate every year and is consistently giving you a lot of innings. That's great, right? We love that. Also, the more advanced stuff. He had a higher whiff rate this year and a higher chase rate. Right? Like he was actually getting opponents to swing outside the zone more than usual, and they were not making contact with stuff in the zone sometimes when it came to his fastball and his slider especially, right? And that's good. And it actually is very interesting, the fact that he had a bad season, despite the fact that the strikeouts were still there, and he generated more swing and miss, and he generated more chasing on pitches outside the zone. That's like pretty wild that he still had a bad season despite that. His expected stats were also very good, right? He had a 3.46 expected ERA and a 3.56 FIP and XFIP, same thing there, which tells you that, yeah, maybe he got a little bit unlucky, or maybe this was really just a season from hell from him, right? And what I mean by that is, let's say everybody who follows the Baltimore Ravens, right? team that isn't playing well. If you follow the Chargers, teams that aren't playing well, but to a degree, you look at the ways that they maybe have lost and you're like, dang, like it's unfortunate. It's just not your year. And I think that might be what happened to Dylan Cease here, right? Because of all the increase in the stuff that I talked about. And also, on top of the whiff rate, on top of the overall strikeout rate and chase rate stuff and the innings, he actually lowered his hard hit rate from last year. Opponents were not. And this is a really surprising thing, right? This is actually, it probably would blow a lot of people's minds that he actually had a better hard hit rate than last year, right? Last year, he gave up a hard hit rate of 38.6%, which ranked in the 51st percentile. This year, he was in the 72nd percentile with a 37.5% hard hit rate. That's something, right? He still is someone who's going to give up home runs and stuff like that. I'm not saying he's a pitcher that all of a sudden is removing hard contact. But when you put all of that together, it makes Cease's season really fascinating. You got more strikeouts than usual. You got more chase, more whiff. And they also, when they were making contact, it wasn't as hard as it usually is. And I think that's why I think for a lot of people that Dylan Cease was so frustrating this season. Because if you just looked at those numbers, you would say, okay, clearly he's going to be good at some point this year. He's going to have a bounce back. But really, that just never happened. The only time that it sort of happened was a little bit towards the end of the season, the last of the good things to say about Dylan Cease, right? In September and October, an ERA of 3.12, right? That was really good. He really killed it across 26 innings. He really finished the season strong. But in terms of the whole year, he only had 2 months when his ERA was under 1. Or I'm sorry, below 4. Right? That was in May with a 3.71 and then in September, October with the 3.12. So he got slightly better in the first half because of such a great end to his season. And by the way, a pretty good playoff appearance, right? Don't get me wrong. It's not like he was a sensational appearance, but he executed the way that the team needed him to. 3.2 innings. I believe he had 5 strikeouts, did not give up any runs in that crucial game 2 for the Padres. So them losing a series was not on him. Don't get me wrong. The fact that they took him out after just 3.2 innings shows you how little trust that they had in him, because they had been seeing that all year he was falling apart right when you thought he was finally showing the real Dylan Cease was standing up. But that's basically it for the positives, right? Overall, really good expected stats, really good strikeout stuff, really good chase, really good whiff, lowered his hard hit rate. He had a pretty good playoff appearance, his best of his career, and he's just consistent, right? He's going to be a guy that goes out there, gives you a lot of innings and strikeouts. But then there comes the bad. And I think that when it comes to the bad of Dylan Cease, it really, I don't know how other people are going to feel about the bad and whether or not that might actually make people more interested in him as a free agent. Or they might say, you know what, I don't care about the numbers. I watched that guy this year. Every time you needed him to show up, he did not show up. So we're going to get into that in just 1 second, guys. But first, some sponsors. And the first one is our friends over at FanDuel, ladies and gentlemen. You know about FanDuel. You know why? Because it's the best play to go with offers you don't want to miss. New customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets back if you win your first bet. That's right. Just pick the bet, whatever it is. You want to do parlays? You want to do a simple buddy line? You want to do a point spread? You want to do player props? Whatever you want, they've got it at FanDuel. And if that first bet hits, like I said, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. But we're not done, folks. We also got to talk about another one of our sponsors, our good pals over at Rougiette. We love Rougiette. You know why we love Rougiette? Because it's an important thing for all you folks out there that might be struggling. Let's be real. Let's be real for a second. Everybody listen to me. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. You're tired. It happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. And that's where Rougiette comes in. Rougiette.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rougiette makes it to get started. You can just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online. No awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. It's great. And if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly and directly, straightly to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. Visit Rougiette.com/yak to get 15% off your first order. That's Rugiet.com, RUGIET.com/YAK. And don't forget to use our code LOCKEDONMLB so they know that we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. Go check it out. And just like that, everywhere, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing despite it all, talking about Dylan Cease's 2025 season in review. So we talked about the good of Dylan Cease. And I genuinely think that if you told fans what I told you, except for the ERA, right? Obviously. If I just told fans before the season, contract year, all that sort of stuff. They need him with all the pitches going down. If I just told you all the things I mentioned before, the strikeout, the whiff, the chase, the hard hit rate going down, you would be like, oh my God. Like, did Dylan Cease win the Cy Young this year? No. And here's some of the reasons why. The first thing and most obvious thing, he was a strikeout artist, but he was also a walks artist, right? He had a 9.8% walk rate up from last year, and it only trailed behind Jose Soriano and Gavin Williams, 10.8 and 11.8 respectively. That's right. He was third in strikeout rate, but also third in walk rate. A real Blake Snell type of situation we got coming down here. But that's not it. And I think that what really happened, right? You must be thinking, well, no hard hit rate, more strikeouts. What happened here exactly? He just gave up home runs at the worst time. He had the 25th highest home run per nine, which is home run rate, of any starting pitcher, which, by the way, isn't awful in a vacuum. There are good pitchers that had worse rates, right? Like Jacob deGrom, Joe Ryan. I think the problem more so with Dylan Cease, what happened this year, was timing. That's the way I look at it, right? Because when it comes to timing, this is a dude that just every single time you thought that he was about to show up, just completely faltered when it mattered most, right? Like, that's just what happened. His home run per nine, first of all, it spiked, actually, in the second time through the order, when Dylan Cease was facing the order, to 1.16. And more importantly, was 2.16 home runs per nine. That was insane. Third time through the order, he was basically always giving up the big home run. And because of the walk rate, more often than not, they were 3-run home runs, a 2-run home run, and whatever it was, they were usually multiple people on base when he was giving up the home run, whether it be the Mets game when, he struck out the side, and then what happens next inning? Bases loaded, gives up a grand slam, right? Like, that's just kind of what happened to him all this year. He had the 12th worst ERA among all starting pitchers, their third time through the order. That's right. The 12th worst. Once you got to the third time facing Dylan Cease, there were only 11 guys that you wanted to face more than him. That's unfortunately just what happened. And he also, just in general, had the 17th worst home run per nine over that stretch as well, right? Like, this is just a guy that was getting killed. He gave up the home runs at the worst possible time. And if you want even more stats on that, he had the 4th worst clutch rating via Fangraphs of any starting pitcher, with the exception of Andre Palante of the St. Louis Cardinals, Kevin Gausman, and Sandy Alcantara, right? So you might think, hey, Sandy Alcantara, that's a decent name. Well, he was pretty bad this year, right? Like, Kevin Gausman used to be very good, and he had a little bit better of a season, I think, because he was able to limit some of the walks, right? That's the thing. Just because you don't have like clutch season does not mean that you didn't have a good season, right? There are teams that have won. Let's look at it from a team perspective, right? There are teams that have won 90 wins that had a horrible clutch rating, which meant that they were blowing people out and they were up by 4 a lot. But when it came to like the really close games, they weren't good at winning close games. But that doesn't always mean that you're a horrible team. But in the case of Dylan Cease, with the walks, with his home runs spiking, like I just said, with him having the 12th worst ERA among all starting pitchers third time through the order, that kind of sums it up. 4th worst clutch rating. He was also, if you want to use another stat that emphasizes clutch, he had the 6th worst win probability added. I can't speak sometimes. Win probability among all starting pitchers. So clutch rating 4th worst, win probability added 6th worst. That kind of explains everything, right? And everyone knows it. And this is why Mike Schill, I think smartly, took him out so early in that playoff game. He went to 3.2 and he was like, I've seen what happens. I know what happens to you this year. You tend to give up the long ball, so that's why they took him out, right? And there's more to what I think that he struggled with. Why is it that maybe he wasn't able to do that? Is it all fluky? Not entirely fluky. He did have some struggles mechanically and whatnot. It wasn't just like, dang, I happened to give up all my home runs at the worst time. No, it was also that he generated less ground balls this season, right? That's not great. Not great at all. Ground balls is one of the best things to produce next to strikeouts as a starting pitcher. Last year, his ground ball rate was 40.3, and this year it was 37.3%. Now, not a huge decrease. And the 40.3 from last year, it's not like he was up there in the percentiles either. He's going to be a guy that will give up some home runs and give up some line drives and all that stuff. But the fact that it also decreased, not the best of signs, right? That's just unfortunate. And the other thing that I think happened here was his slider. This is the biggest point that I could find when it came to Dylan Cease. Why was he struggling? Well, why was he giving up the home runs? His slider was one of the best pitches in all of baseball last year. And it was one of the best sliders in general. It had a plus 25 run value in 2025. And by the way, it's always been good before that. Plus 5 run value in 2023 and plus 35 run value when he almost won the Cy Young in 2022. He only had a plus 4 this year. This might be worrisome going forward because it makes you wonder, did he just have like a couple years where that pitch is carrying him? Does that pitch have to have, for those who don't know, run value is kind of like the value that a pitch was on a season given certain situations, right? So like given how was it when a man is on first base, right? How was it when were they able to make it to second base? It's almost like a success rate thing, right? And plus 35 is insane and plus 22 is insane. And a plus 4 for run value for any pitch is really, really good. Like that's a solid thing to give up. And yet he still struggled. So that makes me wonder, does his slider just have to be absolutely incredible for him to be successful, given the fact that he doesn't really have that much of a third pitch? He lost 2 inches of vertical drop on the slider this season, and his sweeper as well, which he doesn't use nearly as much, but his sweeper that he's started to use a little bit also lost 5 inches of drop. It wasn't breaking on guys just as much. And what do we always talk about? When you're watching baseball games, you guys have probably heard the term a hanging slider. It hung up too much, right? That's what happens a little bit. He does not have the horizontal break and certainly did not have the vertical break to make up for the fact that it can hang sometimes and the fact that he doesn't have that third pitch, right? Yes, his third pitch hasn't been very good in the past, right? But even still, it seems like he's a guy where his fastball isn't wipeout. This isn't a Brian Wu level fastball. This isn't heck, sometimes Nestor Cortez's fastball, right? This isn't one of those guys. So he needs that slider to be breaking a lot more. It lost some inches this year. It just wasn't exceptional. It was just very good. And that would make me worried as a fan if my team was going after Dylan Cease thinking, so it's almost like he just has to be amazing. It's kind of like, say, a player who doesn't walk and only hits home runs and strikes out a lot. It's like, damn, I'm really hoping that he's able to keep up the home run stuff. In Dylan Cease's case, you're really hoping that slider is going to break at the perfect time when he's facing opponents, right? And I also am wondering from this year, was he in his head too much? I'm wondering if that's a part of why he struggled this year, right? Trying to figure out more than 2 pitches. He got lit up in the postseason last year, and a big conversation was he needs to add a third pitch for teams that kill fastballs. Right? Because if they're killing fastballs, then you're sitting there going, I better hope that my slider is just God tier Super Saiyan mode. Otherwise, I'm screwed, and they'll just wait for you to throw that fastball, right? They just won't chase your stuff outside the zone. And it's possible that maybe he got in his head because early on in the season, and in general in the season, he tried to diversify his repertoire a lot more, right? He threw more sinkers this year, 5%. He threw 3.5% of sweepers, a change up 1% of the time, so we're not going to count that one. But he did try to use those pitches to wiggle out of jams, as opposed to previous years where he was fastball, slider, and a little bit of knuckle curve, and that's kind of it. He diversified it a little bit more, especially early on in the year. He threw like 12 changeups in one of his first starts of the year, and he threw 12 in total last year, pretty much, right? Like, that was the big thing about Dylan Cease, and I'm wondering, was he saying, did someone tell him we need to work on that third pitch, so that way not only can he be a better pitcher, but also look even more appetizing in your contract year in free agency? And I'm wondering if that was some pressure with the with free agency coming up. Did that screw him up? Did that throw him off his game and make him overthink things? It's totally possible, in my opinion. So that's all the bad of Dylan Cease. And I want to do my conclusion now for Dylan Cease and how I felt about his season and why I think he's going to be one of the more fascinating free agents, because I think it totally depends on what team acquires him, whether or not they're going to be happy. But first, let me talk to you guys real quick about one of our sponsors, and that is our friends over at Prize Picks. You know them, you love them. And here's the thing about Prize Picks, right? Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, these can get you paid, man. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks. It's such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on a given player's projections, like Josh Allen passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, which he, for some reason, can't do this year. But whatever, and you'll be in the game, right? It's great. It's really quick. You can make your lineup in under a minute, and you can do a stacks feature, which Prize Picks just added. So if I want to ride with just one single player, if you're like, you know what, man, I'm going all in on that man Jackson Dart. You're like, I want the rush yards, the pass yards, a touchdown. You can put it all in one lineup. It's also fun to just follow other players in the app and copy their lineups with one click. And injury reboot feature. If your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. It's great, guys. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's oh so good to be right. And just like that, everybody, we are back here thriving and vibing on the Locked On Padres podcast. We've been player reviewing. We've been talking about the good and the bad of Dylan Cease. And now I just want to give my overall thoughts, right? Bottom line is it was bad, right? Like, it was bad. It was really bad, right? I think the reason that this season was so bad, because in a vacuum, you look at this and say, okay, well, he struggled a little bit, but there's still some good peripherals there. And at the very minimum, sometimes we underestimate how much just having guys that could fill in innings and be consistent and give you some value and occasionally look like a superstar, like how much value that is for teams, especially in a very starting pitching starved baseball economy that we currently have right now, right? That's just what kind of breaks down. But I think that one of the worst things, and I didn't put this in the bad section, but on top of the clutch rating in general, let's remove that from just how he did this year in context of just going on the field every day, but also how much the Padres in particular needed him, right? With Joe Musgrove being down, with Darvish being down, with Michael King basically being down for most of this season, right? They basically were relying on Nick Pivetta, who came through, right? We talked about him on Tuesday. He came through, right? Go check out the player review for Nick Pivetta. That was a fun one too. Really fun deep dive. But then he every single time they needed this man, he could just not come through. The bullpen was starting to get taxed. You went into games as a Padres fan being like, dude, do I trust Randy Vasquez more than Dylan Cease? Not nearly as talented as Dylan Cease, and probably a player that it will not surprise anybody if heading into next year he gets completely lit up and the expected numbers kick in for him. But that's just what happened this year. It was just really not clutch. Losing on Roki Sasaki as well, part of this. All these sort of things, the high payroll, and it's a contract year. Since when do guys have this bad of a contract year? I actually remember at one point this year, I went back and looked from since 2013, the worst contract year performances. Dylan Cease was one of the 3 worst ones that I saw. Genuine. I think another one was Carlos Gomez or something like that. And I was also taking into account if they were good, by the way. If you're a bad player and it's your contract year, it's a little bit different. But for a guy who was this good, a guy who finished top 10 in Cy Young voting, it was really disastrous and it really hurt them. Does it change the season? Does it mean that they win the wild card series if he was on fire? I don't know. Does it mean that they win the division if he actually pitched a lot better? Maybe. That's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. But in terms of him as a free agent, first of all, spoiler alert, no, I do not think that he's coming back. Not just in terms of what I think, but also if you look up reports, Dennis Lin of The Athletic being like, yeah, he's probably not coming back. And the reason for that is also because he's a Scott Boras client. And I think what could happen this offseason is that he could get one of those LeBron deals. He could get the Blake Snell deal. Well, he goes out 3 years, $80 million, whatever, 3 years, $65 million, whatever it is, and waits to cash in next year, right? He goes out, balls out for the Cincinnati Reds, whatever, right? And then comes back out and they're like, okay, we're going to opt out from the rest of these years and now get our big payday, similar to what Blake Snell did. And you might be wondering, but Javi, why in anyone would anyone want a guy like this, right? It's just the innings and strikeout, man, right? He's always going to be a highly desired target because of that. You just don't have pitchers like that. So teams are going to say, you know what? We can help you develop a third pitch. We can make sure that you're not relying on this slider being otherworldly in order to be successful. We know that you were a little bit fluky this past year, especially in a ballpark that's not very conducive to home runs. We think you were really unlucky and were in your head and just happened to give up home runs at the worst possible time. And we're going to fix that, right? Because we know you have the talent and you've been very good before. And we love guys that give us innings of strikeouts, right? I think it's just the kind of season that, like, if you're projecting optimistically, it was basically like if Blake Snell was horrible in the clutch this past year, right? Like, take the 2023 season for Blake Snell, right? He was walking batters all the time, right? He was walking batters all the time, but he made up for it by striking out everybody. He had one of the best stretches that anybody had ever had in 2023. Literally, like Bob Gibson type stuff. He had like, I think it was a start. It was something like no one has ever had a 15 start stretch as good as Blake Snell, with the exception of Bob Gibson. Like, it was that crazy, right? So amazing stuff. One major difference, of course, between those two, that Blake Snell is better at generating ground balls, right? So a lot of teams are going to be more interested in a player like that. That suggests, okay, it's walk, strikeout, or ground ball for you. That's great, right? Like, you can take the ground balls, or I'm sorry, you can take the walks if they're able to produce such swing and miss like that. And with the ground balls being down for him, with the fact that you might be worried about all the things I talked about, it's possible that, I think, not even possible, he will be signed, and he will be one of those top tier free agents. I think it all depends on where he goes. If you're a team who needs a number 2, or absolutely if you're a team that needs a number 3, he's going to be a nice get. All of you Yankees fans out there, you have Fried, you have Rodon, add Dylan Cease. That's a good ad, even though that's a little bit of a hitter-friendly park. That's a decent ad, right? If you're a Blue Jays fan after this season, you're saying, you know what, I'll take him as a number 3 behind some of our guys. If you are, frankly, in a vacuum, if the Padres had enough money, you would be happy with him being your number 3 starter. I just think that that's how it all depends on the role that he's going to. If you are a team that has been dying for pitching like the Baltimore Orioles, and you go out and only get Dylan Cease to be your 1, you better hope that Grayson Rodriguez is awesome, because that could get a little bit out of hand. But those are my thoughts, guys, and I hope you enjoyed the overall season in review for Dylan Cease. It was a complicated season, and I think that this is why we like looking at stats, but I also understand a lot of you who may leave comments being like, Javi, I don't care about the stats. This dude didn't show up. To that, I would say totally justified. I will say, remember, year-to-year variance in baseball is real. And with the things that we talked about on today's show, with the home runs at the worst time, what if they just don't happen at the worst time? What if he's giving up a solo shot instead, and it happens in the first inning, and he's great throughout that, right? What if he just gives up a little bit less walks? I look at that and I say, this is still a highly desirable free agent. Won't be with the Padres, but for the Padres this year, this is like a C- season, right? Like, that's just what he delivered. And it's unfortunate because it's possible they win the division if they got a good Dylan Cease year. It's possible. But he really killed them all year long, and it's unfortunate, and is why I know that some of you have asked, did we really win the Soto trade? Because Cease was terrible for us that second year. I get it, but overall, I can't wait to see where he goes. And all of you Padres fans out there, do not be surprised. You could be upset, but don't be surprised if next year he's pretty dang good again. Delivers a 3.5 ERA, 180 innings, and strikes out 27% of batters. That's a top 15 pitcher, more or less, or close to it, right? Especially if he's able to have those stretches that he had last year with the Padres, where, yes, he always will have those awful stretches where he's getting 4 home runs, like given up to the Mets. But then he'll also have those stretches where it's 6 innings, 10 Ks, no runs. 5 innings, 8 Ks, no runs. 6 innings, 2 runs, 12 Ks. He will have like a 3-start stretch like that, which is what makes him so desirable. But with that all being said, guys, that about does it officially for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember, subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts from. Go check out the other player reviews, right? We did Nick Pivetta on Tuesday. Go check out my episode with Paul Holden of Locked On Rockies. That was a fun one. And tomorrow's episode, it's a fun Friday. No guest, but it's a fun Friday in the sense that we will be doing the Luis Arraez player in review. Can't wait to get into this one, and I imagine some of you, especially those who have been following this show and know my thoughts about Arraez, will be excited to hear what I have to say. But until that next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Friday faithful homies, take care.